Have you ever noticed how a routine Honda service suddenly costs 3 times more than expected? What should have been basic maintenance turns into engine treatments Honda never asked for, add-ons approved in seconds, and charges added without a single warning light ever turning on. And this didn't happen at a shady garage. It happened at an authorized Honda service center. Across owner forums and real service invoices, Honda owners describe the same pattern: different cities, different dealerships, but the same outcome. And it almost always begins the same way. I'm Adam, and today we're breaking down things to watch out for when you are working with a Honda service center. Most Honda owners don't lose money because something breaks. They lose it because something is suggested. And almost every story begins with the same recommendation. Scam 1. Preventive services Honda never asked for. If these services are so important, why don't they appear anywhere in Honda's official maintenance schedule? Because Honda's maintenance schedules are built around measurable wear, diagnostic data, and long-term testing. Services that cannot be linked to specific symptoms, warning indicators, or defined intervals are not required for normal operation or reliability. Honda owners frequently report being advised to approve additional engine-related treatments during routine servicing, even when the car shows no warning lights, no abnormal noises, and no changes in performance. The recommendation is almost always framed as preventive. The advisor explains that it will protect the engine, improve long-term health, or avoid future damage. The language sounds responsible. It sounds like smart ownership, and that is exactly why it works. Here's the part that's rarely emphasized. Honda does not include these procedures in its routine maintenance requirements, and they are not mandatory in any official schedule. They are not triggered by onboard systems, yet they are presented as something the car needs, not something the owner is choosing. Because these treatments do not produce immediate, noticeable changes, they are nearly impossible for owners to evaluate. After the service, the car drives the same. The engine sounds the same. Nothing feels different. That lack of feedback creates the illusion that the service must have helped, when in reality there is no proof it was ever necessary. This is what makes preventive services so effective as a sales tactic. They cannot be easily disproved, and they rely on fear of future problems rather than evidence of current ones. Now, if a service has no clear symptom before it and no measurable result after it, how do you know it was needed at all? In most cases, you don't. The absence of immediate failure becomes the justification, even though the car was not failing to begin with. The service feels justified simply because nothing went wrong afterward. Over time, this creates a cycle. Owners approve these treatments repeatedly, believing they are extending the life of the vehicle while quietly increasing ownership costs without clear mechanical benefit. This is not accidental. These services are easy to sell, difficult to question, and highly profitable. And once they appear on an invoice from an authorized service center, they carry an air of legitimacy that discourages resistance. Once a Honda owner has agreed to preventive services, the next tactic often arrives quietly, almost casually. It does not sound alarming, it sounds convenient. This is where many owners say the bill begins to grow without resistance. Once a customer agrees to the first recommendation, the conversation subtly changes. The resistance drops, the trust deepens, and that's when the bill begins to grow quietly. Scam 2. Inflated value-added packages. If these extra treatments are genuinely important, why weren't they mentioned when the service appointment was booked? Because these services are easier to sell once the car is already inside the workshop. At that point, the customer feels committed, rushed, and less likely to walk away. Many Honda owners describe the same moment. The car has already been handed over. The service advisor returns with an updated estimate. Suddenly, additional treatments appear, framed as sensible add-ons or limited time protections. The explanation is delivered quickly, confidently, and often bundled together so that declining one feels like declining all of them. What makes these packages effective is that they sound harmless. They are described as protective, cosmetic, or hygienic rather than mechanical. Owners are told they will prevent corrosion, improve longevity, or maintain resale value. The language suggests responsibility rather than indulgence. Yet after the service is complete, most owners notice the same thing. The car drives exactly as it did before. There is no improvement in performance, no increase in efficiency, no tangible change in reliability. The only measurable difference is the final invoice. So, if a service produces no visible or measurable result, how do you know if it's valuable? In most cases, it isn't. The value exists only on paper. Without clear before and after evidence, the service relies entirely on trust rather than outcome. Because these treatments are framed as optional but responsible, declining them can feel risky. Many owners approve them not because they believe in their necessity, but because they want to avoid the possibility, however unlikely, that saying no might cause harm later. That fear does the selling. Once owners become accustomed to approving add-ons, the next pressure point often appears through timing. Before we move on, if this is already sounding familiar, subscribe to the channel. These breakdowns are here to help Honda owners recognize patterns before they show up on an invoice. No dealership drama, no fear tactics, just clear explanations so you can make informed decisions. All right, let's continue. After services become familiar, timing becomes the next lever. Not what is done to the car, but how often it's brought back in. Scam 3. Premature service intervals. When your Honda already knows when it needs service, why is someone else overriding that timeline? Because service reminder systems serve business needs, not vehicle conditions. The maintenance minder responds to how the car is driven. Reminder calls respond to how often revenue is required. Honda vehicles are engineered to reduce guesswork. The maintenance minder system tracks driving conditions and usage patterns to determine when servicing is actually needed. In theory, this eliminates unnecessary visits. In practice, many owners report receiving repeated calls, messages, or notifications urging them to return for service long before the system indicates it. The reasoning is often framed as caution or care. Advisors suggest that early servicing is better than late servicing, or that frequent visits help preserve long-term reliability. The implication is subtle but powerful. Waiting feels irresponsible, even when the car itself is not asking for attention. If early servicing doesn't harm the car, does that make it harmless? Not financially. While early servicing rarely damages the vehicle, it steadily increases ownership costs without providing proportional benefits. Over time, those extra visits add up quietly. This practice is difficult to challenge because it does not cause immediate damage. The car continues to function normally, the owner feels proactive, and the service center benefits from increased footfall and additional sales opportunities. It is a system built on plausibility rather than necessity. As service visits become more frequent, recommendations often become more urgent. As visits become more frequent, so do warnings. The language shifts from optional to urgent, and suggestions start sounding like necessities. Scam 4. Critical part replacements without proof. Well, how can a part be described as about to fail without showing clear evidence? Because urgency is more effective than explanation. When fear replaces measurement, decisions are made faster and questioned less. Honda owners often describe being advised to replace parts described as nearing the end of their life. The explanation is delivered with concern, sometimes with warnings about safety or potential future damage. Yet when owners ask for evidence, they are frequently given verbal assurances rather than visual confirmation. Ethical service practices involve transparency. Worn components can be shown, thickness can be measured, damage can be explained. When these steps are skipped, urgency becomes the primary selling tool. If a replacement is truly necessary, why not prove it? Because proof slows the process. It invites questions. It creates space for doubt. Urgency closes that space. Many owners later discover that the replaced parts still had usable life remaining. By then, the decision is irreversible. By the time a Honda owner has approved preventive services, accepted value-added packages, and returned earlier than necessary for servicing, the relationship between customer and service center has already shifted. Trust still exists, but it has become one-sided. And that is when the most difficult tactics to detect begin to appear. By this stage, the relationship has already changed. Trust still exists, but it now works in only one direction. And that's when the hardest practices to challenge appear. Scam 5. Charging for services that are difficult to verify.
So this is a little bit of confusion on my part. It looks like maybe the check engine light was on. Customer states the check engine light is on, check and advise, okay? And then it says other, injectors, plugs, and oil and filter changes with injector replacement due to rich conditions. To start with, everything else tested good. I'm thinking maybe this is the notes. Maybe they're saying that it needs injectors and then put plugs and oil. It's a little bit confusing there, but almost $2,100 there. Okay, if they're doing injectors, plugs, oil filter, oil and oil filter, that, maybe that sounds, I had to look at the pricing, but sounds reasonable. Then we've got customer states check engine light is on, check and advise, spark plugs, not correct plugs. Well, it says here that it's got plugs. So I'm not really sure. Again, it's a little confusing.
What happens when a service cannot be independently confirmed by the customer? It becomes almost impossible to challenge. When verification requires technical expertise or specialized equipment, the system relies entirely on trust rather than evidence. Many Honda owners report situations where services appear on invoices, but there is no clear way for them to confirm whether the work was actually performed. Wheel alignment charges without alignment reports. Cleaning services where no visible difference can be seen. Fluid top-ups that do not noticeably change fluid levels or performance. The issue is not always outright fraud. Sometimes the work may have been done partially, rushed, or performed without clear documentation. But from the customer's perspective, uncertainty remains. And uncertainty favors the service center, not the owner. If a customer cannot verify a service, does accountability still exist? In practice, it weakens. Most customers do not have the time or confidence to dispute charges they cannot easily prove. Paying and moving on feels easier than confronting a system designed to overwhelm questions. This is why these practices persist quietly. Complaints remain scattered, invoices are paid, and patterns continue. When verification becomes difficult, communication becomes even more important. That is where another tactic often appears. Scam 6. Confusing technical language used as pressure. Why does everything suddenly sound urgent when it's explained quickly? Because speed and complexity create authority. When explanations are rushed and filled with technical terms, questioning feels uncomfortable, even disrespectful. Service advisors are trained to speak with confidence. Confidence builds trust. But when confidence replaces clarity, owners lose the ability to make informed decisions. Technical language becomes a barrier rather than an explanation. Owners describe situations where recommendations are delivered rapidly, packed with jargon, and framed as time-sensitive. Delaying approval is subtly presented as risky. Saying, "Let me think about it," feels irresponsible, even when no immediate danger exists. If a service truly matters, shouldn't it withstand simple questions? Yes, necessary work does not collapse under scrutiny. When urgency depends on confusion, the goal is approval, not understanding. Silence benefits only one side. Knowledge restores balance. Why this keeps happening? Why are these patterns becoming more common now rather than disappearing? Because the modern service model has changed. Cars have become more reliable, but service centers still operate as profit-driven businesses. As unavoidable repairs decline, revenue shifts toward discretionary services. This shift does not require malicious intent. It is structural. Targets exist, incentives exist, and selling services becomes easier than waiting for genuine failures. Authorized branding adds another layer of protection. Customers assume legitimacy because the logo on the wall represents trust built over decades. That trust becomes a tool. How Honda owners can protect themselves. What actually protects an owner in this environment? Preparation and patience. Knowing what the owner's manual says. Trusting the maintenance minder system. Asking to see worn parts before approving replacements. Requesting written estimates and reports. Taking time before saying yes. Maintenance should be boring, predictable, transparent. When it becomes urgent, confusing, or emotionally charged without evidence, something is wrong. Being informed does not make you difficult. It makes you equal in the conversation. Honda builds cars known for longevity and reliability. That reputation is earned through engineering, not through unnecessary services. But even the most reliable machines can become expensive when information is used against the owner instead of for them. Awareness does not mean distrust, it means control. Have you ever approved a service you later realized you didn't fully understand? Did you feel pressured to say yes? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help another Honda owner avoid the same mistake. And if you want more honest breakdowns that protect your car and your money, watch the next video on your screen and subscribe to the channel. Because smart ownership doesn't start under the hood, it starts with knowing when to say no.